Well, good day. So this one's a little bit different. This video. This is about. Now I want to wrap up the Philippine trip I took. I was there for 30 days. I'm obviously back in Thailand. This is a view over the Bay of Thailand out of my condo here. Very small condo, but amazing view in a good area. But anyway, the Cebu trip. So I was there for a month, and I wanted to just kind of go over, this is all the places I stayed, this is the type of cities I went to, this is the cost for me to go there. And the cost was one of the a couple of things that really surprised me. The cost was one of them, of how low it was to actually travel in the Philippines. Because I know certain things are more expensive in the Philippines, other things are a little less expensive, depends on where you are, but hotel and resorts and things are typically a little more expensive than Thailand, depending on where you are. The level is not the same as Thailand, so there is a difference. But either way, I went to 13 cities in the Philippines over 30 days. I did buy a return ticket, which is unusual, but I need a return ticket in order to get a 30-day stamp in Philippines, which you get on arrival. So I had no intention of using that return flight. I fully expected to change the date. Planning for me a month ahead just doesn't work. This one happened to work out, which is great. So I actually booked this trip 2 weeks later than I left, and I got so tired of waiting for it, and I just wanted to get to the Philippines after planning it, intending to go there and thinking all the great things I was going to do. So I actually canceled that flight, took the loss on it, and I booked another flight 2 weeks earlier. So I left the end of January, I came back the 1st of March, so I maximized my free visa time. But either way, I went to 13 cities. The only thing I planned was the return ticket and the first 3 days. The first 3 days I stayed in IT Park in Cebu. I stayed just outside of Ayala Mall, which is the central block, it's called, in IT Park. There's a big market beside it, which introduced me to Philippine street food and different things, which was good. It also introduced me to flavored San Miguel, which I abused a little bit throughout that trip, and fried chicken. As if you watch any videos, basically I ate that 3/4 of my days. It was an amazing time to sit back and relax with that at the end of the day. So that said, how I made this trip was I started in Cebu. I just relaxed for a day or two, and then I would plan my next move either the night before I was leaving or the next morning. Which is a little bit dangerous when you're hitting ferries and you want to hit certain times, but I never ran into a problem. So the fear of that travel is non-existent. But from Cebu, I actually hopped on a ferry. It was like 800 peso, I believe. I always confuse peso and baht, but my first hotel, I stayed in a decent place. I want to stay central, but to give you a cost bearing on that, I spent about $40 US a night, 2,100 pesos each night there. That was a little bit on the higher side for most of the Philippines because I stayed in smaller cities, but it is Cebu, it is IT Park. It was a decent place. So I flew in, I spent 3 days there, had a great time in IT Park. I went and saw a clinic, had to get a Superman shot. One of these vaccines, love it or hate them, but it was a Shingrix vaccine I thought I needed. So I did stop, so it was a good trip there to get in there, but I planned my next visit the night before I was going to check out of the hotel. I always knew I could extend the hotel if I ran into trouble. That was my plan in most places. But I just hopped on a ferry. It was 800 pesos for a ferry, so $16. It was about a 2-hour trip. I went over to Bohol. And the big city in Bohol is Tagbilaran. So I stayed in Tagbilaran for, I believe, 2 nights. A place called Hotel John. That's when the prices started dropping. I spent 1,200 pesos a night, which is $24 for a hotel right on the main strip of Bohol. So Bohol is connected to another island, which is called Panglao. One of the big parts of that island is called Panglao, which I did come back to because I planned to go to a bunch of small cities and then return to the ones I really loved or that were convenient before I flew back. So Panglao happened to be one of them. But Bohol, great time in Bohol, amazing people, super friendly. I happened to be there on a Saturday and Sunday was just, everybody in the province came into the city, it felt like. So there's a big there's a big church there, cathedral, in the middle of Bohol, and the streets were just filled after that. All the vendors were out. square. So I had a good time there. I made some good video for that, just of how friendly the people were. So that was my first introduction in Bohol. So I stayed in Tiger there, and I hopped, and then I found that there was a ferry that was going to go to another island, which was CDO, meaning one of the big five. So I went over to CDO. It was an overnight ferry. I think it was about 10, 11 hour trip, where I stayed in a locker. I mean, that ferry cost me, I think, 1,300 peso, $26. So I got a night. It wasn't a great sleeping night, but I got a night in an air-conditioned, semi-private place that had 4 rooms and only one was being used, and that guy actually snuck in from the general population. Good guy, is a doctor, just got his doctorate, so I had a chat with him, and he told me a lot about incomes and different things, so which I'll share in some more videos. But I took an overnight ferry there to CDO. The biggest problem with the ferry is it arrived at 6:30 in the morning, so I didn't even bother hopping in a trike or pedicab or whatever they want to call them down there. I walked. It was about 2.5 kilometers up. I did send an email overnight to that hotel and said, hey, I want to check in early. If there's a way to do it, tell me what the cost is. I did check in early, even though I paid 1,200 peso. I paid an extra 900 peso to check in early because I paid half of their, I guess what you call the rack rate, the room rates on the brochure. So had a good time in CDO. I spent 2 nights in the Prime Lux Hotel. I would recommend it because it was nice and close. And with the night market, I was warned. The first time I was warned about be careful. There's snatchers in the market. I had no issues. Holding my camera up, taking some videos, seeing new things. I had no issue with that. A lot of attention from females, a lot of attention from local Filipino people. As long as you engage them and talk to them first, they're always responding back, which is great. So this is, what is this, day 7, day 8, I left CDO, and I hopped on a 10-hour bus, which going right through Mindanao. So CDO's at the top of Mindanao, and I was flowing through. I intended to go to the mountains, but something happened with somebody I was going to see, and they couldn't make it. So anyway, I took a 10-hour bus through Mindanao, went through a couple police checkpoints, military checkpoints, which is interesting. Ended up in right in the bottom of Davao City. Which Davao City was one that I was really looking forward to, seeing. Potential place where I could maybe set up a little home base for a while, because really that's the intent of this trip, is to find a home base in the Philippines and maybe one in Thailand and switch back and forth. I just can't sit still, so I'm thinking that might work until I figure out a better solution. So I sat in Davao for 3 nights, and then I extended an additional night because I could catch a bus down to General Santos, and I missed that bus for the day. I didn't want to arrive in the middle of the night, so I stayed in Davao for 4 nights. Had some great video there. Met a group of young YouTubers, that we put their video on. They got a bunch of viewers and a bunch of subs, so that was great. Really helped them out. They live in the slums, and life is not easy. They're trying to, get monetized, and they actually make some pretty decent content for, I would guess 8 to 12-year-olds. So I left Davao and I hopped on a bus, and I went to one of my first real small cities other than Bohol, and that was General Santos. General Santos, I arrived 2 days before Valentine's, and the place was red and flowers and hearts all over the place, and there was a big festival right in the middle of town at Oval Park. And I stayed just down the street in between Oval Park, about half a kilometer, and another half kilometer over to the big SM Mall. So I had the ideal location called Hotel John. And Hotel John was, I'm getting confused. Hotel San Marco. It's about 1,350 pesos a night, 1,400 pesos a night, so $26, $28 a night US, which I had a really good time there. Stayed for a few days. Went and visited some different places, the mangroves, and some biodiversity places. But General Santos itself was such an inviting community. Me walking around, getting the attention, and people wanting to help, and seeing the music, and Filipinos know how to sing. That park was always a place to go at any time of day. And then you walk down to the other end. You hop in the Starbucks, you get a little bit of westernization there. A donut shop and the SM Mall and everything else you need. So anything I needed, laundry done and all that stuff, was all down that main strip. So I really enjoyed that. So General Santos was one of my number one of 3 top places that I really enjoyed. I think my camera's going out here, I'm not sure, but anyway, either way. So General Santos, because I actually snuck out of General Santos. I paid for an extra night I shouldn't have, and I hopped up to Digos. And Digos was about an hour. I left General Santos on a run, basically. One morning I woke up and just said, I have another night here, but I'm leaving. And I really love General Santos.
There we are, now we're cooking.
He said, I hopped up to Digos.
Digos. Look at that.
But I walked to the bus station, it was the next bus leaving, so I took it. And, I think it cost me 230, 240 pesos for a bus ride, so $5. Took me about an hour and a half to get to Digos. And I stayed
Professional trike driver here. It's called trike, right?
Every time I landed in a new city, I seemed to
Same Thailand.
The new city better than the last one. Digos was a mini version of General Santos without the main square. That's what was missing. But what they did have was an amazing night market, which I spent a lot of time in, and I ate in, and I had a couple of drinks in, and beer, and whatever at the end of the night. But I also walked around that night market, and around the city was so populated with night activities, from tennis clubs to kids renting, electric cars in the park, and massages on the street, and so much street food. And I had a really good time in Digos. And I stayed at a place that cost me, I think it was $12 a night. It's like 590 pesos a night, and I stayed there for 2 nights. And the way I found it was, I took the first bus to Digos from Gensan, and when I arrived there, I just told the pedicab driver, "Where's the big night market? I know there's one here." I said, "What's the hotel near there?" So he drove me down near the night market, and then we went down this dirt road full of potholes. I got very scared if it was going to rain. I would never get out of there on foot or on the trike, but it worked out. No rain. Amazing spot to stay. It was about 150 meters from the entrance of the night market, which I went to both nights and spent some time. So that was a really good spot. It cost me about $14 a night, 2 nights in there. From Digos, I needed to get somewhere, so I didn't want to go to a place, and this is where I got stuck. So I took a bus ride up to Davao, which was another, another hour and a half, 2 hours. So it cost me about 130 pesos, 230 pesos, I believe. So when I landed in Digos, on the way to Davao, I just didn't want to stay in Davao. I've been there before. That's where the old president's from. So it's a well-maintained city, and there's just no nightlife and not very much happening there, for me anyway. And I just saw it for, I spent a few days there, I think 4 days. So I didn't want to stay there. So as I was driving, I saw one domestic flight that left, I think weekly, from Davao to a city called Bacolod. And oh boy, what an amazing selection I made there. So I hopped on the bus, I booked the flight while I was on that bus. I landed, they dropped me off at SM Mall in Davao so I could spend some time. It was in the middle of the afternoon. I didn't have a flight now. I had booked at 8 o'clock at night. So I hopped in a taxi around 5 o'clock from Davao Mall, spent 2.5 hours in there, which was great. I could load up on everything to replenish. Hopped on that flight, landed in Bacolod, and the first thing I did was drop my suitcase off. Stayed in a place called Avenue Suite, which was about 2,000 pesos a night, so about $40, a little better one. It was on the main strip called Lacson, which was amazing. It was I think Bacolod has the most malls for population I've ever seen. And a big ferry port, and also has the airport, so it was a really good place to jump off and jump into. But I stayed in Avenue Suites, and I found a couple shops, live music down the streets, and not really karaoke, but open mic type of places where they brought in the singers. Fried chicken and San Miguel every night, basically there. Met a couple people there. I put a couple videos out. I talked to a lot of people. It's so easy to meet them there, because they want to know about me. I want to know about them. So Bacolod was really good. I actually needed to return because I really liked it. So after Bacolod, though, I spent a couple days there, and I found a ferry in Bacolod to Iloilo. So I hopped into a ferry on Iloilo, and I thought, Iloilo, City of Love, I'm going to get a lot of good stories. I couldn't find people. I don't know if I stayed in the wrong spot. I stayed in city proper, downtown, where the markets are, everything else. The best thing I found about Iloilo, and I just found the wrong spots, but the best thing I found about Iloilo was the markets at night when they shut down and they open them up for, barbecue chicken and, beer, and everybody's out. It's nice and cool there. The wind's blowing through. It's a beautiful night. A couple nights I spent there for dinner. So I try to stay away from the local places, and I try to stay away from fast food and eat the local food as much as possible. But Iloilo, I couldn't find people. There's a lot of people. They're very friendly people, a lot of markets, but I just didn't feel that vibe in Iloilo. So the last day in Iloilo, I checked out my hotel fairly early, 9 o'clock in the morning, with the intent I was going to go and find the best mangoes in the Philippines, if not the world, they told me. A 15-minute ferry ride is an island called Guimaras from Iloilo. So I checked out of my hotel, zero plan, hopped on that ferry, 15 minutes. I wanted to try mango pizza I kept hearing about. So I did go to a place to get mango pizza. I don't want to mention it because it was probably the worst pizza I've ever had in my life. But there was a few places down the street which I hear are very good places to eat. This one, it was just pre-made crust. The mangoes were amazing, but that's the extent of it. The mango smoothie was probably the best smoothie I've had in my life. So the benefits of that. I was on that island for maybe 2.5 hours. I hopped back on a ferry, came back to Iloilo, which is a takeoff point to other ferries. So I came back there and I found a ferry back to Bacolod. So I hopped back on that ferry and did the reverse and stayed in Bacolod, which I had no choice because I couldn't get a domestic flight out of Iloilo, and I was deciding where am I going to renew my visa at this point, or am I going back? Renewing my visa was the first and foremost. I was intending to go back to Bohol, which I know has a really good immigration office, spend a couple of days on the island, relax and get my visa renewed. So I flew back to, I took a ferry back to Bacolod, stayed there one day, met somebody previously I was trying to meet again, but they weren't available, but that's okay, I still had a good night there. And from Bacolod, I knew I could take a flight back to Cebu, and from Cebu I could get to Bohol. So I took a flight from Bacolod back to Cebu, Mactan, Newtown. First time I stayed there on the Lapu-Lapu side where the airport is. The other side of the bridges are like around the island where the airport is. The other side is Cebu itself and the big island. So I stayed actually on Mactan, Newtown, and I was blown away by, there's a lot of Korean tourists there, but a lot of tourists, but mostly Korean, and everything around there was designed for Koreans. So I had a great selection of food. I had a great selection of coffee shops and barbecues and different things. And so good markets. So I spent a night there. I met somebody, a local there that showed me around a little bit and had a good time. Bought some dinner for them. Had a couple beers as normal. And so I had a good time in Mactan, Newtown. I'm definitely going to go back, but next time I go back to Mactan, Newtown, I'm definitely staying in the local part. There's one called Red Doors, if you can find that, Doorz. Very inexpensive hotel in the middle of Lapu-Lapu. You walk out, you're local, but everything you need is there. All the coffee shops, restaurants, everything else. But it's very, very local. So next time I go to Lapu-Lapu, I'm going to be staying there and renting a motorbike. This time I didn't rent a motorbike. Missing a motorbike, I took a flight from I took another ferry from the Cebu ferry back down to Bohol, Tagbilaran City, with the intent that I was going to find a resort to stay in for 3 days, renew my visa, extend it. This is near the end of my trip. This is like day 24 of my trip or something like that. So I did take that trip. I did book one of my most expensive hotels, which was 2,800 peso, so about $60, but it was a 4-star resort down kind of a windy road as normal, not on the ocean, but it was called Tamarind Resort, really good. Did have a little issue in the beginning with them. Somebody went in the room after, took the key, I don't know, some confusion, but I talked to the owner on the phone and he just said it can't happen. So, but I had a great time there. They had a cafe, they had a little beer bar, big pool. But just outside was, I rented a motorbike, which is a very smart thing to do. So when I got off the ferry in Bohol, I had arranged to rent a motorbike from the same guy I rented one last time I was in Bohol. I think it was 600 peso a day, $12 a day for a brand new NMAX. Had a couple thousand kilometers on it, and I trusted the guys because I gave a deposit, no questions asked when I came back. This time was the same. Gave $1,000 deposit near the pier. Came back, gave my $1,000 back, no problem, no questions. Had a good time and used one tank of gas, put a lot of kilometers. But I drove Panglao Island and a lot of Bohol in those 3 days. I really wanted to see the resorts and the towns. Could I live in a place like this? Because Bohol was a number 3. It was Jensen, Bacolod. Digos was a close one, but just too small. And then Bohol. Could I live in one of these 3 places? And that's why I wanted to come back. So Panglao was amazing. I met some locals in Panglao. There's another city beside Panglao on the same island called Duas, something like that. Duias, something like that. But I went around, I found a couple local expats, wanted to have a chat with them about, how is it here? How are you treated? What's immigration like? I mean, the important questions about if you're going to be long-term or you're going to come in and out quite often. So I did ask that. Cost of living, where you live. There's no high rises on that island, obviously. The highest is probably 3 or 4 floors. So I had a good conversation there. I met a couple of people. My most expensive hotel is a resort. I did hang out a little bit at the pool, never used the pool. But I hung out there, had a couple of beers one night, at the end of the night, my last night. So I had a good time, a little bit of breakfast they have, good American breakfast. So I stayed there. It's called the Tamarind, $60 a night, decent hotel. But from there, I knew I could take a ferry over to Dumaguete. Dumaguete was not a choice for me to go to because of all the issues I heard with expats, and a lot of the old foreigners are very opinionated. Anyway, I bashed them, probably too much in a lot of other videos, but they obviously deserve it. Putting videos out you can live for $400 a month, I don't agree with. So I did go over to Dumaguete and I tried to stay away from Valencia where most of the foreigners were. I wanted to stay in a very local part. I wanted to stay where I could talk to local people and see local people. They're not in the hotel, but they're in all the places I ate at and all the places I visited. So I stayed in a place called Bricks Hotel. A little more expensive than Panglao now. Now it's 3,100 pesos a night, so about $63. But it was one of the best hotels. Had some issues with the free breakfast, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get into that because litigious issues and whatever. And they did send me an apology. I had a chat with the manager and whatever. You can't knock a place for 1 or 2 employees not being trained. Anyway, it is what it is. So I had a great time there though. It's like an old industrial type of, raw cement, the pipes, exposed pipes and cooling pipes and everything showing. They did have construction next door putting pilings in, so they were pounding during the day quite a bit. But other than that, I was out with the locals, taking video, seeing what Dumaguete was about, trying to hit the markets, trying to hit as much local places as possible. So I had a really good time in there. I spent 3 days in Dumaguete because I did not renew my visa in Panglao, so I was definitely needed a place that was a ferry or a very easy flight back to Cebu so I could hop on my flight back to Bangkok. So that's why Dumaguete was a choice. I did miss Sikihor, I did miss Iligan, I did miss a bunch of other Ozimas and all these other places, small places I definitely need to get to. I will go next time, but Dumaguete was well worth the trip there. If you can stay local, I don't know what it's like with the expats. I know whenever I went into a Starbucks to get a coffee or Bose coffee, they always tried to talk to me and engage me in conversation. I was just short, polite. I just didn't want to get into the questions where I'm from and what I'm doing there and all those other things. Everybody wants to know everything. My business, I'm going to keep it that way. So I spent 3 days in Dumaguete. It cost me, 3,000 pesos a night, as I said. And I booked a ferry back to Cebu in the morning. The ferry is about 800 pesos, so $16 US to go across to Cebu. I took a taxi from Cebu to the airport, direct. I didn't stop anywhere else for the simple reason that my flight was, I left a little bit late. Dumaguete, I hung out at some coffee shop, had a meal there and stuff, but knew I was going to probably hit the lounge when I got to Cebu because I got some free lounge passes for that place. Use them up, get some free meals. But I hopped on that ferry, hopped on a taxi from the Cebu port, took it over, painless, seamless. Took it into the Cebu, airport. If you know anything about the airports in the Philippines, I mean, they're just so easy to get through, especially for foreigners. I'm not saying they're lax or anything else. They just make it simple. The lines are not there. The crowds are not there. So I hopped on the flight to Cebu, and flew back. So total cost for this whole thing, the only thing I can really separate is what is my transportation cost outside of the things I paid cash for. The cash I withdrew, which I was withdrawing all my pesos through a Wise card. I had cash back up in my pocket so I could convert if I got into some trouble. I had enough to last me probably at least a week anyway. So, and then I had the hotels, which I charged all those the credit cards the best I could. So the hotels total was 53,000 pesos for those, 29 nights. 53,000 pesos for hotels, which turns out to be about 1,000 and $1,060 US for the nights. I used transportation, including my flight to Philippines, and a couple and my flights back, and all the ferries and everything, and the internal domestic flights I took. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ferries, 1, 2, 3 buses, a bunch of taxis, 2 domestic flights, and the flight in and back, and that cost me a total of 65,000 pesos, so $1,300 total US. No, sorry. Let me come back. It cost me a total of 28,000 pesos, $560 for the ferries, the flights, and everything else. The cash I withdrew was used for, soap, shampoo at the local shops, water, buying whatever, a couple of beers at night, and all my food and anything else I bought. I didn't buy much. I bought a cell phone plan there for unlimited, which I 100% say go to Smart. 990 peso, $20, unlimited 5G. Just go to Smart, they'll set you up. Don't buy an eSIM before you go there. I was throttled. So either way, I spent 65,000, withdrew 65,000 pesos even, which is about $1,300 US. So in total, I spent 146,000 pesos. It's about $2,600 US total. I returned with a little bit of cash, and about $33,560 Canadian. So for less than $90 a day, I was traveling the Philippines exactly how I wanted, wherever I wanted to go, including everything that was included. That was my only cost that I had while I was there. The only cost I had was obviously my Thailand condo I'm still paying for when I return. But so a total of, again, 146,800 pesos, 2,640 US dollars, or $3,568 Canadian for 1 month travel, including everything, in somewhat decent hotels. Some were better than others. I tried everything. All the food and drinks I wanted, and all the flights, transportation. I didn't even think about money. So I flew around for $2,600 US and returned with a couple pesos in my pocket. I will be going back in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I believe I'll be going back for all of April.